History often tells us that empires fall because of armies, greed, or foreign invasion. But in Benin, the story begins with a curse spoken in grief. Long before British guns breached its walls, before bronzes were looted and thrones toppled, there was a prophecy whispered in the Oba's palace. It was not shouted in anger or carved in stone. It was spoken quietly, like a father surrendering hope. Elders would later say the words were never meant for enemies. They were meant for the future, and once spoken, they could not be taken back. The Kingdom of Benin, located in present-day southern Nigeria, was once one of Africa's most powerful and sophisticated empires. Its walls stretched for miles, its bronzes rivaled Europe's finest art, and its kings, called Obas, were considered sacred. Benin was not a kingdom that feared outsiders. It traded with Portugal, welcomed envoys, and controlled regional commerce with confidence. But power breeds expectations, and expectations breed pressure. By the late 1800s, Benin stood at a dangerous crossroads between tradition and a rapidly encroaching colonial world that did not respect boundaries or sacred authority. At the center of this story stands Oba Ovonramwen, a ruler remembered not for conquest, but for defiance. He inherited a kingdom already under tension. British officials demanded unrestricted trade. Missionaries challenged sacred customs. Merchants wanted access to resources the Oba believed were spiritually protected. To the British, he was obstructive. To his people, he was a guardian. Ovonramwen believed that Benin survived not through weapons alone, but through balance between ancestors, the living, and the unborn. To break that balance, he believed, was to invite destruction far worse than invasion. According to palace oral historians, the prophecy was not born from arrogance, but from loss. The Oba's son, his favored heir, died under mysterious circumstances during a period of intense political pressure. Some say illness. Others whisper poison. For the Oba, it was a sign that forces beyond Benin's control had already entered the kingdom. In mourning, he withdrew from public ceremonies, spending long nights consulting priests and ancestors. It was during this period, elders say, that the Oba uttered words that froze even the most seasoned chiefs. If Benin fell by foreign hands, it would never truly belong to its conquerors. The curse was not dramatic. It carried no lightning or blood sacrifice. It was precise. The Oba is said to have declared that any power that destroyed Benin would gain its treasures but lose its peace. They would take the bronzes, the ivory, the throne, but never the soul of the land. Their rule would be restless, their victory incomplete. Benin would rise again in memory, while the conquerors would carry guilt across generations. To the Oba, this was not revenge. It was spiritual accounting. An imbalance demanded correction, even if delayed by centuries. Many dismissed the prophecy as the sorrow of a grieving father. But Benin culture does not separate emotion from power. Words spoken by an Oba were believed to travel beyond time. They were contracts with the unseen. Still, life continued. Festivals resumed. Traders negotiated. Yet something shifted. Chiefs began recording dreams of fire and falling walls. Priests warned of ancestors turning their backs. The palace atmosphere grew tense, like a storm waiting for permission to begin. And then, in 1897, the British expedition arrived, not as guests, but as executioners of empire. The British described their invasion as a punitive expedition. Benin described it as betrayal. While the Oba had requested delays for sacred rituals, British forces advanced anyway. What followed was devastation. The palace was burned. Sacred altars destroyed. Thousands were killed. Oba Ovonramwen was captured and exiled. The bronzes, artworks infused with spiritual meaning, were looted and shipped abroad. To the British, this was victory. To Benin, it was prophecy unfolding. Elders would later say the curse activated the moment foreign boots crossed forbidden ground without consent. Oba Ovonramwen was taken far from his kingdom, stripped of power but not dignity. Even in exile, he refused to cooperate fully with colonial authorities. Witnesses say he aged rapidly, not from weakness, but from heartbreak. He died away from Benin's soil, but not away from its spirit. It was after his death that strange coincidences began circulating, stories not written in official records, but passed through generations. British officers involved in the invasion reportedly faced mental breakdowns, unexplained deaths, or careers that collapsed unexpectedly. Coincidence, some say. Fulfillment, others insist. What makes the prophecy unsettling is not superstition, but pattern. The British Empire gained Benin's treasures, yet the bronzes became symbols of shame rather than triumph. Museums displayed them, but debates over ownership never ended. Descendants of invaders faced growing pressure to return what was stolen. Benin's name, once nearly erased, returned globally through art, activism, and restitution demands. The empire that took Benin would itself begin a long decline, unraveling under the weight of wars, rebellions, and moral reckoning. The curse, if it existed, did not destroy. It lingered. For Benin people, the prophecy became a mirror. It forced reflection. Had the kingdom done enough to protect itself? Had internal divisions weakened spiritual defenses? The curse was not only aimed outward, it was a warning inward. Elders taught children that no empire survives arrogance, whether foreign or local. Benin's fall became a lesson passed through proverbs, not textbooks. What you lose without wisdom, one saying goes, returns as memory, not possession. In this way, the prophecy reshaped identity, turning loss into endurance rather than defeat. Modern historians debate whether Oba Ovonramwen truly cursed the empire or whether later generations shaped the story to cope with trauma. But trauma itself creates truth. The prophecy gave meaning to chaos. It offered psychological resistance when physical resistance failed. For many Africans, colonialism was not just occupation, it was humiliation. The curse reframed that humiliation as temporary. It suggested that moral authority does not vanish with military defeat. That idea alone sustained dignity in a time designed to erase it. Today, Benin City stands modern and busy, yet echoes of the old kingdom remain. Shrines still honor past Obas. Oral historians still recite the fall not as an ending, but as interruption. When discussions arise about returning the bronzes, elders often mention the prophecy quietly, not as threat, but as reminder. They believe the curse's purpose was never punishment, it was balance. What was taken unjustly must create discomfort until justice is restored. And discomfort, unlike violence, travels peacefully across generations. There is something deeply relatable in this story. Many people know what it means to be powerless in the face of authority. Many have whispered words in moments of loss, hoping the universe was listening. Oba Ovonramwen's curse mirrors the human instinct to speak truth when action is impossible. Whether or not the prophecy was literal, its emotional truth remains powerful. It represents the refusal to accept erasure quietly. In that sense, the Oba spoke for millions who had no voice against empires. Critics argue that belief in curses distracts from real political causes of Benin's fall. But belief systems are part of politics. Colonial powers dismissed African spirituality as primitive, yet underestimated its psychological strength. The prophecy ensured that Benin's fall would never be narrated solely by victors. It embedded doubt into colonial success. Even today, museum placards struggle to explain how artifacts acquired through violence can be celebrated. That unresolved tension is the prophecy's afterlife. Interestingly, the curse did not prevent Benin from rebuilding relationships. It did not promote eternal hatred. Instead, it framed reconciliation as conditional on respect. Modern Benin leaders welcome dialogue, restitution, and partnership, but they insist on acknowledgement. That insistence feels like the prophecy still breathing, quietly guiding tone and posture. The curse did not demand destruction of others. It demanded recognition of harm. That distinction makes the story powerful rather than vindictive. For younger generations, the prophecy has taken on new meaning. It symbolizes resilience rather than mysticism. Artists reinterpret it through music and film. Activists cite it in debates about cultural theft. Students see it as early resistance against globalization without consent. The curse becomes less about spirits and more about consequences. Actions echo. Injustice accumulates interest. History never forgets, it only waits. That lesson resonates far beyond Benin. Some elders say the prophecy will only fully rest when the Bronzes return home. Others believe it has already done its work by keeping Benin's name alive. Either way, the story refuses closure. It adapts. Like Benin itself, it survives transformation. The curse is no longer fear, it is memory with teeth. It ensures that the fall of Benin is discussed not as failure, but as warning. Empires built on force inherit unrest. Empires built on respect inherit loyalty. When British museums quietly began returning artifacts, many see coincidence. Others see completion. The prophecy never promised immediate justice. It promised delayed reckoning. That patience makes it unsettling. It operates on historical time, not human impatience. Whether spiritual or symbolic, the prophecy succeeded in one undeniable way. It denied the conquerors total victory. They won land, but lost narrative control. And narrative, in the long run, is power. Oba Ovonramwen did not live to see Benin remembered globally again. But perhaps that was never the goal. His curse ensured that forgetting would be impossible. That even in textbooks written far away, Benin would surface, not as footnote, but as unresolved question. Why did such an advanced kingdom fall? And why does its story still disturb modern conscience? Those questions keep the empire alive in thought, if not territory. The tragedy of Benin is shared by many cultures whose histories were interrupted rather than ended. The prophecy gives language to that interruption. It tells the world, defeat is not disappearance. Loss is not silence. Memory can be weaponized against erasure. In that way, the curse becomes universal. Anyone who has watched their world collapse unjustly understands its power. Modern Nigeria continues to grapple with colonial legacies, but Benin's story offers a framework for dignity. It teaches that resistance does not always wear armor. Sometimes it wears patience. Sometimes it survives as story. The curse was never meant to scare. It was meant to remember. And memory, once planted, is harder to destroy than walls. As historians reassess colonial narratives, the prophecy gains academic relevance. It forces scholars to confront how oral histories preserve truths written records ignore. Dismissing such stories as myth misses their function. Myths organize meaning. They preserve ethics. The prophecy of Benin's fall does exactly that. It assigns moral weight to conquest. In a world still shaped by empire, Benin's story feels unfinished because it is. Restitution debates, cultural revival, and historical corrections continue. Each step feels like another line of the prophecy unfolding, not through magic but through conscience. The curse does not haunt buildings. It haunts decisions. Perhaps the greatest irony is this. The Oba who lost everything ensured that Benin would never truly be owned again. Its artifacts travel, but its story resists containment. Its fall became its immortality. That is the quiet power of the prophecy. The king who cursed an empire did not curse out of hatred. He cursed out of refusal, to refuse erasure, silence, and finality. And in doing so, he transformed defeat into endurance. Benin fell, yes, but it never vanished. And maybe that was the prophecy all along.